Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with Victory Strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
Welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly. I'm that recovering good girl and your victorious woman empowerment partner. And, you know, this is where us victory chicks and you men who care about us meet on Fridays to chat about things we can do to overcome our challenges, and get empowered and make our lives sparkle. And I'm glad you came today. You're the reason I'm here, and I thank you for it. And you'll be glad to hear our guest today, Caroline Webb. She's been trying to get here. I've been trying to get her here for over a year. Caroline is the CEO of Sevenshift, a firm that shows people how to use behavioral science to improve their life. Her book, How to Have a Good Day, is being published now in 16 languages and 60 countries. And what she has for us today will help us not just through the next couple of weeks, because you know how it is at the holidays, but more importantly, little tweaks you can make in the new year to make a big difference. So stay tuned for Caroline Webb. Well, it's starting to look a lot like Christmas, isn't it? There's even snow in the forecast, but not enough to ruin shopping trips or Christmas parties, just enough to, well, maybe a little, they said 2 to 4 inches, so enough to be a little annoying. But enough to also to make us feel Christmassy or Hanukkah-y. But it's not like we didn't know Christmas was coming. It's just that for all these weeks, we've been enjoying that less than seasonal 50-degree temperature day by day. And the holidays, I don't know about you, but they sort of snuck up on me. Maybe they snuck up on you. It's not like we didn't know Christmas was December 25th. So have you put up a tree yet? Or do you go real or artificial? I always go real. In fact, for many years, I didn't just go real. I went live, as in a bald tree. Or a bald or a living tree. And the thing with the living tree is it can only stay inside for a short time. So you pick it up, like the day before Christmas Eve, but it has to be out of the house before, by the time Christmas is over, because the warm temperatures get to it and it starts to grow. And then when you take it out, it's a process. You take it out and you have to do it in stages so you don't shock the tree from being in the house and then being outside. Back then it was a lot of fun to do. I wouldn't have the time or patience for it now. And one year, and I think I might even be busier, except for 1 year, when I had a full-time job and 3 part-time jobs. And I was barely home. I barely had time to get home, take a shower, and get changed for the next thing. And I didn't get the tree out fast enough. So my tiny little Christmas tree in my tiny little apartment stayed and grew. I watered it. I loved it until late March. And it did start to grow. So it was funny. I had a tree in my apartment. Then when Joseph and I were newly married, at the beginning of December 1 year, only a couple months after our wedding, I lost my job as a training manager. Now, some of you know what that's like, getting that year-end ditch. And it's rough. Losing your job any time is bad, but getting axed in December is the worst. So I was so nervous about what I was going to do for money. And, when you're newlywed, most of the time you don't even have any money. So that was the year of my Charlie Brown Christmas tree. But since we moved to Westchester, I've been getting trees at the tree farm, where you cut the tree down yourself. And until this year, it's been a fun thing. We had a little ritual. Just I stop at Wawa to get something hot to drink while we're looking, to take with us while we're looking, and then we bundle up and we go to the farm. And we walk around rows and rows of trees till we find the exact best one. Then we take turns sawing it down, and it's usually a good size, so we can put it, put the seats down in the back seats down in the car, and the tree usually fits in the trunk. Most of it, maybe a little bit sticks out, and it's not that far from our house, so it's not a big deal. This year, however, was different. Our tree picking day was last Saturday, but we had some stuff to get done first, and then the plan was to get the stuff done, get something to eat, and go to the tree farm. So our travels had us out on Route 41, sort of in Cochranville. In fact, it was mid-afternoon, and I was hankering for some bacon and eggs and pancakes, so we stopped at the Perkins Pancake House out there. Well, we left there around maybe 3:15, 3:30. And we were trying to decide, do we have enough time to get back to Westchester? The tree farm closes at 5, and it gets, when it gets dark. And then I remembered that we were near another tree farm, and it was just down the road. So we thought that would make better sense, so we decided to go there. Well, that tree farm is set up a little differently than we were used to. The business part where you pay and where there's the machine that bales the trees. And that was sort of set aside from the tree farm. You had to go across the little bridge to get to where the trees were. So at 3:30, that really wasn't much of an issue. But as we walked around, we discovered that the trees were nowhere near as nice as the place where we usually go, even though the company has the same name. But you know how it is. We were there. We just wanted to get that particular task out of the way. And we were determined to find a tree that we liked. So we walked and we walked. I would find one and I'd call Joseph over. He'd find one and he'd call me over. By the time we found one we both liked, the sun was setting, and most of the families of tree pickers they were dwindling. They were doing the last part of sawing down their tree. So we decided on that tree. Joseph started sawing, and then he started making these noises like grunts and groans. And I said, Joseph, it's my turn. Let me do some sawing. But you know what, Victory Chicks and you guys, I lasted about 5 minutes. And that was my first clue that the tree was too big, because it was just taking forever to saw this thing down. So Joseph took over again, and as he sawed, I was pushing the tree, thinking if he sawed and I pushed, it would go faster. Now, I don't know if it was faster, but it did make a difference, because that very last little bit was, when I pushed the tree over the edge as Joseph was sawing, and you could tell it wasn't a clean cut. But I think the tree finally decided, I better get the hell off this trunk because these people are nuts. So the tree was down, and then we put it on the little sled that you drag to where you have to pay for it. That's when I realized maybe we made a mistake, because the tree was bigger than the sled. And if it was that big for the sled, it would be too big for the house. So that wasn't a good thing. And then we had to drag the tree through the woods, down a hill, and over a bridge. It was like going to Grandma's house. But by then, the sun was down and the moon was up, and our phones with our little lights were in the car. I'm telling you, if it wasn't for the supermoon, I'm not sure we would have found our way back. But by the time we got to the bridge, we were the last ones there. One of the workers met us and dragged the tree to the baling machine. And then I saw it took 2 guys to pick it up. And I thought, oh, my God, it's really big and it's really heavy. How are we going to get this home? Well, just when I paid for the tree, I was unwinding some nylon twine from a big spool. And we got the tree I thought, if we get the tree in the trunk, if we needed to, we could use this to tie the lid down. You know what, Victory Chicks and you guys, we had no idea what was awaiting us. As the guy baled the tree and we headed to the car to get it ready, the 2 guys carried the tree to the car. We never needed 2 guys carrying the tree to the car. In fact, we never needed any guys. The tree was way too big, and it became even more clear when the guys tried to put the tree in the trunk. They could only get it halfway in, because it was too fat. And it was too damn late to put the tree on a diet. We had no idea what we were going to do. And the guys walked away to their truck because, personally, I think they didn't want to deal with two crazy people. So Joseph was figuring out what to do, working only with the light of my cell phone and the supermoon. That poor guy was trying to get the twine. It was like too much. Then when he discovered that the trunk lid had no hook, you know how, I don't know if maybe it's like that now, but they used to have a hook, and then he would put the twine through, and it wasn't there. I'm really not sure what we would have done or how long we would have been there if the two guys who were both in the same truck didn't drive up and shine their headlights on us. And they didn't get out of the car because they were probably saying to each other, stay in the car, don't get out. Those people are dangerous. But at least they shined light on what we were doing. And finally, Joseph wove and tightened the twine around the tree, and then I got into the front seat, and he gave me the ends of the twine so I could hold the tree in place for the next 40 minutes as we drove all the way back home on back roads with flashers on and that stupid twine digging into my gloves. But happily, we got it home. And without it falling out, I thought, this is terrible. What are we going to do if it falls out the trunk? Well, on Wednesday, after Joseph cut down the tree about a dozen inches, because it was too big and it was too tall, and he put it in the tree stand, and then it fell over a few times. But then he managed to get this bigger than we ever had before, and we'll never have big again, up and ready, and it's beautiful. But you know what? I've already started to look at the Home Depot ads for artificial trees, for the after Christmas sale for next year. Which, by the way, is the same time you and I are going to be thinking about making our brand new baby year a fabulous one. That's why I wanted Caroline Webb to join us today. When I first saw the title of Caroline's book, How to Have a Good Day, I thought it was about some new age thing. And not that I don't like that stuff, because I do. But what Caroline has is so much more than positive thinking. Since reading Caroline's book, I've changed some things I do. And she has great tips, so I think you will too. So she'll tell you, and it's practical. She works with neuroscience, but she does it in a practical way. So go get some good happy hour, something to drink, and come back for some good stuff with me and Caroline Webb. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous victorious women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. This is Annmarie Kelly, and I want to introduce you to management consultant and executive coach Caroline Webb. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad that you are. I loved How to Have a Good Day.
Oh, that's always great to hear.
Well, but you know what?
Fantastic.
You take all that scientific stuff and make practical sense of it. And what I think is you bridge the gap between science and the real life for real people application of it.
Oh, thank you. That's exactly what I was trying to do. There's so much amazing, fascinating research out there, and not that much of it actually gets, into our everyday lives. And it did feel like there was perhaps a need to help the research make that leap into really practical stuff that we can all use every day. So that was absolutely what I was trying to do.
Well, you accomplished it because, another book that I just loved, this is, in my opinion, the best book I've read on anything neuroscience since Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, which that was a long time ago. And the book was really good, but for me, a non-scientist person, it was really, really hard to read. I read it several times, and I listened to it on audio before I could really get all of it. Yours isn't like that.
Yeah, well, I was really trying to figure out what was the simplest way to talk about the science in a way that was actually correct. I mean, there's a lot of bad science, I have to say, out there. There are lots of, stories that you might hear or read that aren't quite right on the science. I really wanted to get it right, but I wanted to make it accessible and kind of fun and interesting, and just, really focus on a few big ideas that everybody could get their heads around, however interested they were in the science. And then, for those who really are super excited about reading academic papers, they can look at the footnotes, but everybody else can just, read the stories and read the practical tips and work from there. So, I'm trying to write on a lot of different levels, and I'm really glad it worked for you.
Yeah, it did. And one of the things you say is that we're living in the gilded age of behavioral science. So
yes.
Why is that? And, so let's start with this. What is behavioral science, and why should I and my listeners even care about it?
That's a great question to start with. Yeah, behavioral science is the science of why on earth we behave the way we do. And it's the neuroscientists, psychologists, and even economists who are looking at explaining why our brain works the way it does and what that means for the way that we think and feel and behave. And it's been a golden age, partly because until a few decades ago, there was really a big focus on what made us mentally ill. And, of course, it's really important to understand, what it is that can go wrong in our brains and in our minds. But actually, in the past few decades, there's been so much more focus on how we can thrive, how fundamentally healthy people can be even better, even stronger, even happier with their lives. And, that's the research that I've been drawing on over the last couple of decades. And, the way I like to think of it is, your brain is like the hardware and your mind is like the software that runs on it. And put together, it's the most valuable and complex piece of machinery that any of us will ever own. And what the behavioral scientists are trying to do is essentially help us put together a manual that helps us understand how to make the most of this machine. And I guess what I've done is taken their very technical stuff and translate it into something that all of us can pick up and use.
And I think you did because I got I already have started tweaking a couple of things. And when I was reading it, one thing I liked is you tell stories about yourself, and you really came to this study honestly because you write that you were having trouble even summoning the energy to turn up for work every day.
Yeah, I mean, even people. I've been doing this work now for, nearly 2 decades, and that was after a first career as an economist and then lots of other little jobs around the place. And, I was just always really interested that you could be in a great job and still be really worn down from day to day. You could kind of feel like, oh yeah, this is a good, this is great. But actually, I saw a lot of people around me, and that included me from time to time, just feeling really drained, sort of not just physically, but also emotionally. And I thought that was really interesting, and I thought that was a big shame because, when you think about the number of hours we spend each week thinking about work, doing work, traveling to work, traveling from work. Not everybody's in a full-time job, but, maybe you're at home and you're thinking about how to make the most of that, or you're working in the community. The point is we spend a lot of time as human beings working, and if we're not happy with it, it's a third of our adult lives, and that is a lot of human potential to waste. So, I was part of that, but it was also I was seeing what was going on around me and thinking, oh, wouldn't it be great if every day could be a bit more predictably like those good days that most of us are lucky enough to have from time to time. And that was really the genesis of the idea.
So, Caroline, what is a good day?
Aha. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit audacious, isn't it, to say, I know what a good day is. It is different for everybody, but there were some real themes that I picked up over the years when I was doing this work with people. I would actually ask them, so what is a good day? What is a bad day? How would you get more good days? And the things that came out were, first of all, around feeling that you were really spending time on things that mattered to you, that mattered in general, that you were really clear on your priorities and you were being productive in going after those priorities. And then the second thing was actually feeling good about what you were doing and how you were doing it. So, whether it's interactions and feeling like, yeah, that was good, even if that was a tricky conversation, I kind of nailed it, feeling good about the quality of your thinking and the influence that you're able to have with your ideas. And then ultimately there's also a third big chunk, which is does it feel sustainable? At the end of the day, do you feel, okay, I might be tired, but I feel like I've got a little bit left in the tank and I feel great about going into it all again tomorrow. And that means being able to handle ups and downs, and it means being aware of your energy and how to boost it when it's flagging. And that's the territory. And that, whatever people are doing, whatever the context they're in, that was pretty universal across cultures, across gender, across age, and so on. So, yeah, that's my answer.
and I liked how you broke it into those three big chunks. And right now we might be feeling somewhat overwhelmed, and all right, so it's the holidays. There's no might about that. But you have hope for us, and the thing that, in fact, one of the things that you say is we can make our reality more of what we would like it to be, and you say that we do that by being proactive and talking to our brain. So really, Caroline, we can steer our brains into giving us a good day, like just about every day?
Well, we can certainly make every day better. And, I am not saying that, you can stare in the mirror and with, a bunch of affirmations and say, I'm amazing, everything's amazing, and it's going to be amazing, right? I mean, there are days that are less good, but I do know, and the science is really clear on this, that we actually have a huge amount of control over things that we tend to think are kind of imposed on us, or we just have to roll with. And that's what I became very interested in, was where's the wiggle room? Where is there the space for us to make things a bit better, and sometimes quite a lot better? And, where are those kind of, where are those spaces, where are those points of control that we all have that we maybe don't realize we have? And, that left me feeling pretty upbeat, I have to say, about the way that even on a bad day, there are hacks that you can use that will actually allow you to see the best in it and remember the best of it. So, that's the game that I'm in.
And you know what, Caroline, one of the things is that you said that, things that we don't even realize that we have control over, and sometimes we don't even realize that we have total control over what's in between our ears.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And
yeah, I mean, the fact is the way that we perceive what's going on around us is such a fabrication of our brains, and we can actually only process a certain amount of what's around us at any given time. Our brains are fantastic, but they can only process a certain amount. Like a computer, they would crash if they tried to process absolutely everything. Like if you pressed all the keys on your keypad, and so. We actually have some choices about what we choose to direct our attention towards. And that's really what a lot of the ideas in the book are about, which is understanding that you have quite a limited stock of conscious attention, and there are ways to direct it more deliberately towards the things that are going to make you feel better about your life. And, frankly, the simplest thing you can do is just to say, okay, what do I want to notice today? What kind of day do I want to have, and what do I therefore want to pay attention to? Knowing that your brain's going to filter out a ton of stuff anyway, so why not make sure that what you do notice is the stuff that you want to see? Perhaps, you want to see people being collaborative or helpful. Perhaps on your way to work you want to, notice anything which, puts a smile on your face. And if you're not deliberate about that, you might miss those things. But if you are deliberate about it, then, there's a particular mechanism in the brain called selective attention, which means that we can actually be quite proactive in deciding how the world seems to us, how reality seems to play out in front of our eyes.
And I think you're right. I think if we go, like and one example that you used, I think, was a meeting that you had, and I'll bet every one of my listeners can identify with that. If you're, well, let's take whether it's at work or, the holidays are coming up. If you're going to a holiday party and you think that the people are wonderful and you can't wait to see them, you walk into that party with a whole different thought process than if you're thinking, I have to be at this place.
Yeah, absolutely, because the trick that your brain uses to decide what you should notice consciously with that small amount of attention you have to give to the world, and what you should filter out as spam, the stuff that you don't notice because you don't even, it's just not important enough. The rule that your brain follows is, if something is already top of mind for you, maybe it's an aim that you have or an assumption you have or an attitude, then it'll make sure that you see things that confirm and reinforce and match those things that are top of mind for you, which is why if you've ever bought a new car, you suddenly see on the road all the cars that are the same make. You know, if you decide to wear a new color top to work, and it's like, you know, it's a bold step for you. You know, maybe you're wearing teal for the first time. You suddenly see everybody who's wearing teal. And that's how our brain is going through the day the whole time. And it happens even with attitudes and assumptions. So if I assume that someone is going to be a jerk, my brain will make sure that I see everything that confirms that I'm right to expect them to be a jerk. And the thing is that they might be a jerk. But the thing is, you know, if you're going into a conversation, you say, okay, I'm conscious that what's top of mind for me is going to shape what I see and hear, then I can decide to say, okay, this guy might have been a bit annoying to me in the past, but I'm going to choose to look out for the moment where he says something that's a bit funny, or, you know, the moment that signals that he's a bit more human. And at that point, you can't turn him into someone he's not, but you are much less likely to miss the thing that makes him seem and feel a bit more human. And so, yes, as you go into a holiday party, if you think that it's going to be awful, it probably will be. Mm-hmm. And if you think the opposite, there's a good chance that you will see something or enjoy something that will put a smile on your face.
It's interesting. I had a previous guest on about a year ago, and we were talking about, it was probably about a year ago for Thanksgiving, we were talking about gratitude. And she was saying that she decided to spend a whole year focused on gratitude. And the first thing she did was focused on her being grateful for things with her spouse. And she said it changed her marriage, because instead of finding all the things that annoyed her, she started finding all the things that were really good that she had not been paying attention to.
Yeah, I love that. And I would say that, you know, when you notice that you're feeling cranky, I mean, I'm obviously, when I say you, I say me too, right? When I notice I'm feeling cranky, you know, I'm trudging along the streets in New York and, you know, I'm feeling a bit worn down by the city. You know, I say to myself, okay, let me look for 3 good things in the next 5 minutes. Maybe I see someone helping someone with a bag, or, you know, I see a hat I like, and just the mere fact of seeing those things and putting them top of mind, ironically, even if I do it through gritted teeth, means I'm more likely to see more good things after that. And it's like the virtuous version of getting out of bed on the wrong side. You know, a lot of things that our grandmothers used to say, actually now we understand are really solidly rooted in science. You get out of bed on the wrong side, everybody seems to be really annoying, and it works the other way too. So absolutely. And gratitude is a lovely example of that, you know, to pause and to say, what am I grateful for? It's going to then shape not just how you feel in the moment, but then what you go on to notice next, and then next and next after that.
And it's kind of like in the New Age circles, they call it like attracts like.
Yeah. And I know that when I talk about this particular bit of the science, people often say, oh, that's just positive thinking, isn't it? I say, well, yes, if you want to call it that. I think it's subtler than that, in that it's not saying that everything is amazing, but it is saying that you can choose to direct your attention. And, you know, there's this really startling study that was done with radiologists at Harvard, which you might remember from the book. They had a stack of lung scans to go through, and they were real lung scans, and they were looking for lung nodules. And in the last of the lung scans, there was a picture of a plastic gorilla inserted. And given everything I've said, you know, the question is, well, how many of the radiologists saw the gorilla? And the answer is, as you know, vanishingly small number. 83% of them did not see the gorilla because they weren't looking for it.
I know, that was so funny. You know, it's like, where's Waldo?
Yeah. So, you know, we can decide what we want to look for, and our brain's ability to filter stuff out is so powerful. And, you know, most of the time we don't know what we don't know, of course. You just get glimpses of it from time to time. You suddenly walk down the street and see, you know, a monument or something that you've missed because you've never noticed it before.
You know, that just happened to me last week. Or was it? Yeah, it was last week, and we were driving down, and my spouse said to me, was that bank there before? and we actually, both of us couldn't remember but it didn't look new. So I said, we just must not have been paying attention to it.
Exactly. And, the thing is that all the time we're not seeing and not hearing a great deal, some would say even most, of what's around us. And, we just filter it out so that we can focus on the things that matter. In fact, if you don't have the ability to do that, then that's a pretty serious disorder. It means that you get sort of overwhelmed. So thank goodness, right? We can screen out things that are irrelevant.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating. It does mean we're all kind of living a sort of choose-your-own-adventure. We're all living this sort of incomplete, personal, edited version of reality. We think we're all super objective, but actually, two people sitting in a meeting or at a family dinner over the holidays will actually see and hear different things depending on what's top of mind for them, what they're assuming they're going to hear and see. And, that's not a bad reason for the number of arguments that we can have, with people who are otherwise well-intended. We just see and hear things differently. It's made me a lot more humble, actually, if I'm disagreeing with someone on something, or, I'm talking to my husband and I say, well, don't you remember I said this, or don't you remember this happened? It dials me down in my certainty. It makes me more humble about the fact that I know that there's always a chance that I've missed something.
Yeah, my spouse and I have been places and sometimes were you at the same party I was at?
Exactly. Yeah, so, this is just one of the, 100 ideas that are in the book, but it's actually probably, you're right to start with it because it is perhaps the most fundamental. Often people will say, what's your favorite thing? What's your one thing that you do? And I think understanding this idea of directing attention and being deliberate, setting your intentions before you go into a conversation and saying, what is it I want to notice? And then at the end of the day, saying, okay, what do I want to remember from the day? What are the good things I want to remember? Those are probably the two things I most reliably do every single day. It makes a huge difference.
And they take almost no time.
Yeah, I know. I'm all for realism in kind of giving advice, right? I mean, I'm just the same as anyone else. If something takes more than 10 seconds, the chances of me doing it, vanishingly small. If it's super easy, that was one of the filters for the advice I put in the book was, you have to be sort of scientifically rigorous, and I have to see it work in all sorts of different contexts, and it also had to be true that I used it myself, and that was a massively powerful filter in saying, is this really, really super practical and easy to do?
Yeah, I believe that because that is why I think so many of your tips were, I could do. Now I might not want to do it, but I could.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that's an easy thing to do. I could do that. So, but Caroline, I want to ask you this: that you talk about the mind-body loop, and right now the first one about sleeping, and over the next couple of weeks between shopping, baking cookies, and other holiday good things. I don't think anybody's going to listen to that. So let's go to the next part of that. And I know sleep's really important. We know, but we're probably not going to get a lot. But one of the things that you talk about is, of those four things, you talk about it's sleep, exercise, mindfulness, and striking a pose. Of the exercise, I probably in the back of my mind, because I'm a good walker, I probably understood this. If my head gets really gunked up, if I take a walk, that helps. But you said one psychiatrist calls exercise a little bit of Ritalin and a little bit of Prozac.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we all know that exercise has good long-term effects. It's going to help us stay in shape. It's going to, there's also a lot of evidence about the fact that it helps us stay sharp as we get older. And, that is great. But the things that I'm very interested in are the fact that it gives you immediate benefits. A small amount of exercise, and I'll come back to the small point in a second, small amount of exercise immediately boosts your focus and boosts your mood, hence the point about Ritalin and Prozac. And it's so great because, again, in the spirit of looking for things that I honestly really can do, I'm not a gym bunny. I've always struggled to build up a gym habit. I like exercising, sort of, but I'm not I'm definitely not one of these people for whom it sort of comes very naturally. And so I have been always very, very interested in what are the smallest amounts of exercise that you can do to have this sort of very immediate benefit, recognizing that for broader health and for long-term benefits, you might want to do more than this bare minimum. What is the shortest amount of time that's going to give you that boost in terms of focus and mood? And it's great because, I mean, I've just been collecting all of these academic studies over the years and looking out for shorter and shorter periods of time. And, you know, it's really, we're looking at sort of 10 to 20 minutes of mildly aerobic activity every day, which does mean, you know, go for a walk, take the stairs. You know, it doesn't have to be anything too fancy.
Oh, so even one of the things I like to do is I have a trampoline. So
you're kidding? No, really?
I do.
Oh my God, that's great.
I have one of those in-house trampolines.
Yeah,
so I can bounce up and down on that for 15 or 20 minutes, and it's supposed to boost your immune system and. You know, but I like it. That's right. I mean, it is true that exercise, you know, the studies are quite compelling on the effects on our immune system. So so now, I mean, knowing this work, it does change my routines. You know, the understanding the evidence, you know, means that when I've got a cold, I always would used to say, oh, well, I've got a cold, so I'm not going to do any exercise. But now I understand that actually a bit of mild exercise is going to boost my immune response. So, you know, I do. And I'm a huge fan of walking, like you. I will always, you know, look at whether there's a portion of a journey that I can walk. If it's less than half an hour, then I'll walk it and, you know, listen to a podcast or whatever on the way or do a call. And it really, you know, it really does help when you start to think of exercise not just being, you know, going to some extreme class in a gym, but actually think about how you can weave it into everyday life. Mm-hmm. And I will say, I think probably the book wouldn't have got written if I hadn't known about this stuff, because, you know, every time I hit a wall, I would jump about a bit, and then I'd see a way forward. I hear you. That's, you know, I have a new book coming out in February, and on 2 occasions, I just, you know, when I hit that wall, I just took myself to a hotel.
That's great.
You know, like one was down, you know, I walked on the beach, or I walked, you know, one was in the Gettysburg battlefield. So I could walk there, I could walk on the beach. And that, you know, on one particular occasion, it shifted a whole chapter for me. Just that walk on the beach. And it wasn't that I was necessarily focusing on doing that. I just needed to clear my head. And once my head was clear, I saw it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, in a sort of very meta realization, I've just realized that the video where I watched John Ratey talk about exercise being like Ritalin and Prozac, I actually watched while I was exercising. Interesting. I've got a really clear memory of when I actually came across that video of him saying that. So there we are. So, you know, I know a lot of people find it hard to get enough exercise into their lives. Like, what I would say is, you know, a little is better than none. Perhaps, you know, more is better than some, but some is better than none. And, you know, that means if it's 5 minutes, it's still worth doing. So.
Now, and in that same vein, another one in that same group of that mind-body loop is mindfulness. And recently I was talking with a friend about mindfulness, and we were saying that we aren't making enough time to meditate and calm our minds, and part of it is that we're not having a lot of time, and so, you know, we're giving ourselves that excuse. But you make it so easy by saying that we don't have to spend an hour in meditation to be mindful.
Well, again, you know, I'm curious about what the research says about smaller amounts. You know, I find I get great satisfaction from, you know, meditating with a group of people. I can kind of sustain my attention really effectively. I, too, have found it quite hard to build a proper 20 minutes of mindfulness into every day. And I know that, you know, many people listening will say, well, call yourself an expert in human thriving if you don't do that. You know, the truth is, it has been challenging for me. And so what I've done is I've looked at the research and looked at, you know, what is the evidence around shorter amounts. And there is good evidence to suggest that, yes, you will get some of the benefits of mindfulness, which, and for those who are listening and don't know, the research is, again, quite clear on the fact that it helps with your emotional resilience, your ability to stay calm under pressure, and there's also some evidence that it also helps in your analytical capability. And so, 5 minutes, maybe just in a meeting, noticing your breath for a couple of moments. Hopefully not tuning out completely from what's going on around you, but, everybody can take a moment to go to the restroom and sit, feel their feet on the floor, bring their point of focus to one single simple thing, might be their breath, might be the feet on the floor, maybe just one breath in, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what I found with my clients is that once they get themselves a really super simple micro-mindfulness technique that they can reach for in moments of stress, it helps them get back on track quite quickly. It's not to say that more mindfulness isn't better, but that you can get quite significant benefits from small amounts.
Yeah, and I thought that was really good because you don't have to, that whole idea of I have to meditate for an hour a day, and
yeah,
and I like that. I could be in a parking lot getting ready to go into a store and just take a minute and focus, even if it's just focusing on something on my dashboard.
Yeah, absolutely. That's essentially what mindfulness is. Bring your focus to one single point. Just pause, focus, and return your focus if you find it drifting without beating yourself up. And that's it. And I remember actually almost a year ago I had a chance to talk to Mathieu Ricard, who's probably the most famous, apart from the Dalai Lama, perhaps the most famous monk on the public stage. His focus has always been in sort of spreading the benefits of mindfulness, and I was really cheered to hear him say that it's much better to do a few minutes every day than once every year to do some kind of big meditation retreat, or maybe, to have a real kind of push every odd month. But actually the daily practice, a small amount of daily practice, was certainly where he was placing his chips.
Well, I think that's good. It was helpful to me. It was really meaningful to me.
Oh, thank you.
To know that.
Thank you.
Now, Caroline, we're going to be getting ready for the new year, and you start with the importance of priorities. And you talk a lot about filters, and I love the things that you talked about when you talked about filters. And can you explain what you explain that from the book, and then tell us how to guide our thoughts into setting good intentions with filters?
Well, that goes back to what we were saying before. So the fact that our brain filters out most of what's around us at any given time. And so we can be more deliberate about deciding what those filters should be filtering out and what they should be filtering in. And the tool that I use for that, I call it setting intentions. And what I do is I use a bit of alliteration to help me remember it. I think, what's my aim? What attitude do I want to have about this thing that I'm going into? What assumptions do I have? Are they negative? I'm not saying that they're wrong, but are they going to serve me, knowing that it's going to shape what I actually perceive about a situation? Could I challenge them? Could I say, is this negative assumption going to be true today? Is there a reason why it might not be true today? And failing all of that, my fourth A is attention. Just saying, okay, where do I want to put my attention? And that, if I haven't had time in the morning to say, okay, what is my aim? What attitude do I want to have about the day? What specifically, about perhaps the most challenging thing of the day? What assumptions do I want to have? Do I want to assume people are well-intended, or do I want to assume this is going to be a nightmare? If I don't have time to do any of that, just as my hand is on the handle as I'm walking in, or maybe as things start to feel bumpy in a conversation, I say, where do I want to put my attention? And what that means is that even if you're in a meeting or a family conversation which is going badly wrong, in that moment you can say, what do I want to filter out? What do I want to filter in? Actually, that's too complicated for anyone to remember, so just say, what do you want to notice? And just asking yourself where you want to put your attention is enough to essentially reset your cognitive filters.
And that's interesting. That's practical application can be something social, or it can be business, or it just can be your own thought process inside your head, because sometimes we're
totally
our worst saboteurs.
No, absolutely. If I'm going into a task that I've been putting off for a while, because it's, either it's because it's a bit challenging or it's a bit dull or whatever, I do the same for that too. It doesn't have to be an interaction, although it often is. For whatever is my most important work for the day, I'll say, okay, what do I want to pay attention to here? If I'm doing something I'm really not looking forward to, I can say, okay, what do I want to learn from this? I put my attention on that. Or, if I'm in a meeting, or if I'm listening to, I've gone to an event and it's turned out to be way more boring than I hoped. Once you decide to be bored, you're going to find nothing interesting. But if you say, okay, all right, so this maybe isn't as quite what I hoped, I am going to look out for anything which teaches me how to hold people's attention and perhaps run a session that is more engaging than this. There's always something you can choose to look out for that is going to perk you up a bit.
So so even last night, my spouse and I were driving someplace, and they were doing some road construction, and we were 20 minutes on road construction, and so I was thinking, my thought process was going in a whole different direction than my spouse's, and he's rolling down the window, and he's looking down. He said, "They're not letting everybody go," and I thought, oh, I don't want to do that. I need to focus on something different, because I just didn't feel like letting myself get upset.
Yeah. I think that's just the most perfect example. And it occurs to me also that another way that this often plays out is in emails. If you get an email from someone and it riles you up within the first minute or so, there's just something in the first line that annoys you, there's an excellent chance that you will miss anything which is actually less awful further down in the email. How many of us have read an email, thought, that is outrageous, and then for some reason you've come back to the email a bit later, and you reread it and you realize, it wasn't actually quite as bad as you first thought.
I've done that. Yes, you know what, Caroline? I have done that, and I've reread emails that people have sent me, or that I've sent.
Yeah.
And thought.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So, one of the things in my toolkit is to just be a bit more self-aware of that, and to know that if I'm in a bad mood, that will be setting my filters. And therefore, if I'm in a bad mood and I'm reading an email, I need to not act on it right there and then. I need to go for a walk, just as you were saying, and then I need to come back to it. Mm-hmm. I'll maybe type a kind of rather sharp reply. I'll make sure that there's nothing in the to field of the email. I'll save it to draft. Mm-hmm. And then I'll come back when my head is clearer and my filters have been reset by the fact that my mood has shifted.
And you look at that one sentence that you wrote and say, oh my God.
Yes.
I know.
It happened to me a few weeks ago. There was I was having some plumbing work done, and there were two bathrooms, and the plumber and one of the shower attachments was leaking really badly and needed to be replaced. And the plumber replaced the wrong one. He worked in the wrong bathroom. And I was so annoyed. I was annoyed with myself, I'll be honest, because I thought, I should have supervised it. I should have made sure he knew exactly which one it was, because, I shouldn't have relied on him remembering. And then, obviously it's just that he'd actually removed a perfectly functional shower attachment and then left the one that was leaking. Anyway, I'm sure some of you have had this sort of experience. Yeah. You're just like, oh my God. So, of course, I then write an email, to say, look, guys, this is not great. I get an email back that, to my mind, isn't instantly apologetic enough, so I'm immediately annoyed. And so I then start to write a reply. And then I stop, because I know myself, and I know how this filtering mechanism works. I thought, okay, I went for a small walk. Literally just around my apartment. I didn't even go to the beach or anything like that. And I came back and I realized I'd completely blanked, filtered out a whole paragraph
Oh, my.
where this guy had said, perfectly reasonable, apologetic things. So, the point is we're doing that all the time, and we just don't realize what we're filtering out. And, we can't completely override this filtering mechanism, but we can be more aware of the fact that we're shaping a lot of what we perceive to be objective truth.
So it's really making sure that, so what you were saying earlier, that the brain is the hardware and then you create the software, so it's like that.
Yeah, and, I think that it's very rare that anything is as bad as it first seems. And I think the big journey for me since my 20s, I used to be someone who felt, I suppose I still am, I feel things quite intensely. And for me, the big personal development journey has been getting more even-keeled and more aware of my emotions and more able to kind of say, okay, what if you just take a step back for a moment and hold that at a distance? And actually, that's one of the proven techniques for reducing your stress in a difficult situation is to actually say, put yourself at a distance from something and say, okay, what am I going to think about this when I look back in a year's time? And that's definitely something which I've become better at over the years.
That's a good thing to get better at. That does reduce stress. I could see that it would.
Yeah.
Caroline, we don't have a lot of time left, but I did want to talk a little bit about goals. And you have a formula for setting great goals for a win, is how you put it in the book.
We all think about goals when it comes to the new year. Even those of us who say, I never set resolutions, they're so silly. There is a little bit of a kind of a fresh start sense about the start of the year. So it is useful, I think, to know a bit about the science on goal setting. There are quite a few things that you might want to know, but let me just share my favorite tips. First of all, we usually tend to set too many goals. Our brain is very amazing in many ways, but it's very limited in its capacity, and so we often overload ourselves by setting ourselves too many goals. So there's something about being smart about thinking what's truly the one priority, and then what is the bite-sized version of the big goal that I have here, because what often happens is that we set ourselves quite a lofty goal, and it sort of inspires us. We're going to get fit, or we're going to become a better person, whatever, these huge goals that we might decide to set ourselves. And then they're just so overwhelming, hard to see where to start. And the problem is that if you set yourself an enormous goal and then you don't achieve it, you're setting up the neurochemistry of failure, which is the opposite of what you need to actually motivate yourself. When we set ourselves a tiny goal and achieve it, we feel great, and the neurochemicals that are released are the neurochemicals that we need to be motivated to take the next step. So I'm a big fan of saying, what is the very first small step? And sometimes it can feel like, well, okay, maybe it's just sending an email. And then maybe actually that's too hard, really, because you don't know the email address of the person you have to write to. And so you say, okay, well, my very first small step is to get the email address. And I know it might sound a bit silly, but you really have to break it down to those sorts of tiny, tiny chunks if you're going to give yourself the best chance of success. And then the next big thing that really helps is, people might have heard that it's helpful to visualize success, and it is. The research is moderately clear on that when we visualize something going well, we create about 60 to 90% of the same brain activity as if we are actually experiencing it going well. So, that is essentially your brain not distinguishing all that much between imagination and reality. So this, it's helpful, but it's even more helpful if you can also then think about what's going to get in the way, what's going to stop you from achieving this thing you want to achieve. That's something that scientists call mental contrasting. And it's been shown that if you're just purely optimistic and you say, right, I'm going to do this, it's going to be amazing, but you don't think about what could go wrong, you're actually less likely to achieve it than if you actually inject a tiny bit of pessimism alongside your optimism to say, okay, I would like to, exercise more. I would like, because I'm breaking this down to something very, very specific, to walk to this meeting this afternoon. The thing that is going to get in the way is that I'm going to run it to the last minute, and then I'll be too short of time to walk, and I'll be tempted to jump in the car instead. Or the weather's going to be, colder and colder, and I'm going to just not feel like going outside. Okay, well then, what's your plan? And the language I use for that is a when-then. The scientific term is implementation intention. When-then is a bit easier to remember. So when I hit that moment where I feel cold about, I don't want to go outside because I'm going to feel cold, then I will remember that I have packed a bunch of thermal extra layers, which I have taken to the office. Oh, okay, so now I need to actually think about a when then that's sooner. So when I'm getting ready for work this morning, then I will throw in an extra down layer or whatever. I mean, I know it sounds very specific, but this when then means that when you hit that natural human barrier, which is so normal, you've got a plan. And then it turns out studies show that you're 300% more likely to make your goal come true.
That's huge, 300%.
Yeah.
Caroline, we need to wrap up today, and I'm so glad that you joined us, but we barely scratched the surface, so my listeners are just going to have to get how to have a good day. Tell them how they can get it.
Oh, thank you. If you go to my website, carolinewebb.co, that's .co, not .com, you can get a free chapter of the book, and you can also click on the book tab and see all sorts of places that you can find out more about the book and also buy it if you are so inclined, which of course will be lovely.
And the link to that is on today's radio wrap-up. Caroline, have a wonderful weekend and fabulous holidays.
Thank you. You too. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. Same here. And Victory Chicks and you guys, I hope you're doing something good this weekend. We're going to run. If you're celebrating Hanukkah, it starts on Tuesday. Happy Hanukkah to you. And come back next week and join me for Happy Hour. And until then, chins on.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.